computerized. From the Magic City, the sun and fun capital of the world, Miami, Florida, through the incredible speed of the NCR 315 computer, Warner Productions proudly presents the all-time heavyweight championship tournament. This is Murray Warner at the Miami Convention Hall for the first fight in the 15-fight all-time heavyweight tournament. Tonight's match features the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey, against Gentleman Jim Corbett. The all-time heavyweight tournament is made possible through the cooperation of the City of Miami, Mr. Nat Fleischer, publisher of Ring Magazine, Chris and Angelo Dundee, and Mr. Hank Kaplan, former president of the World Boxing Historians Association. We'll be back in a moment with Guy LeBeau and the details and some comments about tonight's match. Back once again at the Miami Auditorium, and here's the man who in just a few minutes from now will be describing the action from ringside, Guy LeBeau.
Thank you very much, Murray Warner, and hello, everybody. First, let me say that after all of the years that I've been at ringside and in press boxes at various sports events, there's a very special thrill for me in this first fight of the all-time heavyweight tournament. You know, for years, sports fans have argued and debated the merits of their favorite champions of various sports, but none so much, I think, as the great fighters present and past. So with this in mind, I think that this first broadcast would be a good time to tell our listeners just how this tournament was put together, how we obtained the results and the action of every fight.
I think you're right, Guy. And perhaps the best place to start is with the selection of the fighters to participate. We polled the leading sports writers in the United States, and more than 100 of them responded and selected the 16 all-time best heavyweights. Among those who voted were Jim Roach of the New York Times, Mel Derslag of the Los Angeles Examiner, Fred Byron of the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Blackie Sherritt of the Dallas Times-Herald, Cliff Sundberg of the Boston Traveler, Bob Brogue of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and Charlie Herter of the New York Daily News, and George Strickler of the Chicago Trib, along with dozens of other great writers. I just wish we could name every one of them.
I wish so too, Murray, but since we can't, let's do something else. Let's see whom they named. They named Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis, Bob Fitzsimmons, Max Schmeling, Joe Walcott, Gene Tunney, Jim Corbett, Jim Jeffries, Max Bayer, Jack Sharkey, Rocky Marciano, John L. Sullivan, Jack Johnson, Jess Willett, Jim Bradley, Cassius Clay.
That's right, Guy. Not necessarily in that order, but those are the 16 fighters that were selected to participate by the writers.
Well, then, Murray, after the participating fighters were selected, what was the next step?
We went to Systems Programming and Services of Miami, one of the top data processing firms in the area, and asked them if it were possible for their computers to take the information available on the fighters and give us a readout as to who would win a series of matches. And not only that, but give us a round-by-round account, virtually a blow-by-blow with point scores and decisions.
Then, as I remember it, the people at SBS turned to NCR in Dayton.
That's right. The problem was so complex that it took the big NCR 315 at Dayton to handle not only the data, but the programming. You see, Guy, we at Warner Productions wanted to be sure that absolute control of the accuracy and integrity of the series was placed with people who would treat the series as the important sports event we felt it would be. And frankly, we wanted to be absolutely sure there wouldn't be any chance of anyone rigging the outcome of any single fight in the tournament.
I can imagine why. But then after NCR said they could do it, they told you the kind and type of data they needed.
Partly. You see, we had to find so much information on each of the fighters, and so many different factors were involved, that we went to 2 different sources.
That's where Nat Fleischer came into the picture as publisher of Ring Magazine. He certainly ranks as one of the leading, if not the leading authority of boxing in the world.
That's right, and Mr. Fleischer, although he's in his 80s, is still active in boxing every single day. He put the entire staff at Ring to work on the data we needed, altogether many tens of thousands of information bits.
And that included the blow-by-blow accounts of every fight these men fought during the prime of their careers. Boy, what a job that must have been.
The job is right, Guy. When you consider that many of these fights were fought in remote areas, and it involved fights in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Since some of them were not title fights, it was really tough to find blow-by-blow accounts. In some cases, we located old film of the fights and had to pick up the blow-by-blow from the film.
Then the data of the fighters, which included ratings of all of their styles, their punching ability, and so on, was fed into the computers.
Yeah, but that's not all. You see, each fighter had to be rated on speed, defensive ability, and dozens of other things. And this, too, was done by Ring Magazine. Also by Hank Kaplan, the former president of the World Boxing Historians Association. Kaplan worked very closely with Hank Myers of the computer company in planning the layout for the entire program. He was also the man who converted all the data into computer language.
Well, after Kaplan finished, the data was fed into the computer, right?
Well, not yet, because The computer in Dayton had to be programmed first, and it took 18 man-months of computer programming time to prepare the NCR 315 to analyze the data and read out the blow-by-blow type of account that we wanted. Beside that, we wanted to add one more series of bits of information.
What was that?
Well, since we were rating the fighters on a large number of factors, we wanted to be positive as to the importance of these factors, and so we had many of the living heavyweight champions rate the ratings themselves. They, along with a select group of boxing experts, rated how important each of the things were.
So then the fighters themselves aided in determining just how important a good right cross or left hook was. And they gave ratings to things like courage, killer instinct, the ability to take a punch, and so on.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting about how each man rated the variable factors, too, Guy. And that was digested by the computer.
But finally came the matchmaking, the setting up of the pairings for the tournament. This was placed in the hands of Chris and Angelo Dundee. Chris being one of the top fight promoters in the country, Angelo known, of course, worldwide as the man who trains Cassius Clay. But if anybody could come up with tough pairings, certainly they could.
I'd say so, Guy. Just take a look at some of the matches we've already set up for the tournament, and we'll do that in just a minute.
Just before the break, sports fans, we were talking about the pairings for the tournament, and of course, we start off with a fight tonight between Jack Dempsey and Jim Corbett. Then the winner of the fight tonight will meet the winner of next week's match between John L. Sullivan and Jim Braddock. And in the weeks to come, Joe Lewis meets Jess Woodard, Bob Fitzsimmons tangles with Jack Sharkey. The great Max Baer ties into Ring Magazine's choice as the greatest of them all, Jack Johnson. Jersey Joe Walcott goes against the Boilermaker, Jim Jeffries. And the fight that I'm really looking forward to, Rocky Marciano and Gene Tunney. That ought to be a war. Finally, the first round of the tournament ends with Cassius Clay and Max Schmeling.
That's the way it shapes up, and then the winners of the first 8 fights go into the quarterfinal round. And 15 weeks from tonight, we'll have the 2 survivors matched in the all-time heavyweight championship fight.
And wouldn't any promoter who ever lived love to be staging this tournament for real? Or perhaps we should mention this. As far as the all-time heavyweight tournament is concerned, each fighter involved goes into the ring at the prime of his career in perfect physical condition.
That's right, Guy, and I think, too, our listeners should know that each fight is as accurate as human resources and the skills and brilliance of the people at SPS and NCR could make them. That each round is scored under the 10-point must system.
That, of course, means that if a man wins a round, he gets 10 points, and the judges, in this case the computer, awards the round's loser any number of points from 9 downward.
One interesting sidelight of the tournament, Guy, has been the reactions of some of the people we've talked to about the fights.
That's for sure. We'll hear some of those comments in a few minutes, but first, let's talk about the fight itself tonight and the man involved in the match. Let's take Jim Corbett first, the man who downed the legendary John L. Sullivan to win the title in 1892. Jim Corbett reached the peak of his career at 26. His style set the stage for all of the fighters that followed through the years. Corbett was a fine amateur boxer who did not reach any stature at all in professional ranks until he knocked out Joe Choinsky in 1889 on a barge near Benicia, California. His toughest fight was probably the one he fought in 1891 when he went 60 rounds with Pete Jackson to a draw. But Corbett finally got his shot at the title in New Orleans, 1892. That was the year. The champion, John L. Sullivan, the Boston Strong Boy, had held the title for 10 years, and up to the fight with Corbett had defended under the London prize rules. This meant all fights bare-knuckle style. But this fight with Corbett was fought under the new Marquis of Queensberry rules and wearing gloves. Sullivan came into the bout a 4-1 favorite, but Corbett outboxed him. His slick moves made him the new heavyweight title holder when he knocked out Sullivan in 21 rounds. Corbett, of course, is a member of the Boxing Hall of Fame. He died in 1933 at 66. His slick boxing style, his stamina, his punching ability should provide a real tough test for his opponent tonight, the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey.
That's right, Guy. Corbett, the slick boxing great against slugging Jack Dempsey, is a matchmaker's dream, and I think we ought to point out that the fighter who wins the tournament, if living, will be presented a $10,000 gold and diamond all-time heavyweight championship belt. If, on the other hand, the fighter is no longer living who wins the tournament, we're going to present the belt to Archie Moore for his youth program in Southern California.
Fine, Murray, but let's take a look now at a man very much alive. the great Jack Dempsey. The man who has the admiration of every sports fan, a real gentleman who for all of these years is ranked as the one man everyone in sports loves and respects. Dempsey was an aggressive, bobbing, weaving, hard-hooking fighter who could knock a man out with a punch that moved only 6 inches if you could see it. He reached his peak at 24. 49 times in 81 fights, he KO'd his opponents. Jack Dempsey had a string of 22 knockouts going for him when he was set for a title fight with the Potawatomi giant Jess Willard. In that brutal battle in 1919 at Toledo, Ohio, Dempsey knocked Willard down 7 times in the first round, shattering Willard's cheekbone in the process. Willard just managed to last to the third. He was unable to answer the bell for the fourth. But probably one of the all-time most exciting bouts in the history of boxing was when Dempsey met the wild bull of the Pampas, Louis Firpo. That was at the Polo Grounds in New York. September of 1923, and blistering hot. Firpo knocked Dempsey clear out of the ring in the first round. Dempsey, charging back to do battle, dropped Firpo 7 times before the bell kindly ended round 1. Dempsey finally KO'd the wild bull in the second round, but not until 3 minutes and 57 seconds of the wildest action ever seen in the ring had been seen and loved by a large crowd. Controversy seems to haunt the Nassau though. Arguments surround his fight with Willard, with Firpo, and the long count argument has never been settled in his fight with Gene Kelly. In any event, these are the men computer matched tonight for the first fight in the all-time heavyweight tournament.
And we'll be right back with more of the pre-fight activity. Before wrapping up our pre-fight show, we thought you might like to hear what one of boxing's experts has to say about these opponents tonight. Nat Fleischer, editor of Ring Magazine.
Well, Jack Dempsey was not a clever fighter, but he certainly had a terrific wallop. He was a fighter, I should say, who would tear into an opponent from the start of the gun and never let up until he had his man out of gear. In my opinion, Jack Dempsey was one of the hardest hitters that we had in the last 50 years.
All right, how about a fighter like Jim Corbett? Did you ever see Corbett go?
I saw Corbett in exhibitions on the stage. Corbett was one of the cleverest fighters of all time. As a matter of fact, we called him the master of ring cleverness, and he was really the first of the giant heavyweights, that is the great heavyweights, of the modern era who possessed ring cleverness.
In a match between Jack Dempsey and Jim Corbett, how would you see that fight being fought, and who do you see as the winner?
I would pick Jim Corbett as the winner. I would pick him because of his ring science. Jack Dempsey proved in several of the contests in which he engaged that unless a man came to him and would be vulnerable to a quick wallop, he couldn't get him out within the time limit of the contest. Corbett, in my opinion, would have stood Dempsey off, would have prevented him from coming in close enough to toss a lethal wallop.
That was Nat Fleischer, and now in just 1 minute we'll go to Guy LeBeau at ringside. Now, with everyone getting ready for action, here's Guy LeBeau at ringside.
Thank you again, Murray Warner. Ladies and gentlemen, here at ringside, the tension is starting to build as the crowd waits for Jack Dempsey and Jim Corbett to make their mythical appearance. Some of the all-time greats of the fight game have been spotted in the crowd, and we've asked them for their opinions on these fighters and this fight in particular. And right now, let's talk to Jack Sharkey, who was defeated by Jack Dempsey.
If you were in the ring with Jack Dempsey, you either fought or else you jumped over the top rope.
How about Corbett?
Corbett was an elusive type. I think it would have been a long fight. I think it would have been a case of Dempsey swiping at the air and head punching, trying to hit Corbett because he was so scientific as far as boxing is concerned.
Corbett could have outpointed.
Oh, yes, could have.
Then we talked to another great champion, Jersey Joe Walcott, and found that he agreed with Sharkey about this Dempsey-Corbett fight.
Well, that would be a very good match. I think it would be a good match to see, and I think would be a real tough fight for both fighters. But however, I'm inclined to believe if Corbett is this type of boxer that the records prove that he was, I think that he would have been able to outbox and outwit and outsmart Dempsey, because Dempsey, although a terrific puncher and a very good fighter, I think that this fight would have be too elusive and too good a boxer for Dempsey to get through to him.
But here's disagreement, and it comes from none other than the great champion Rocky Marciano, the Brockton Bomber.
I found out that Dempsey was a great fighter. One of the all-time greats, I'm sure of. He certainly belongs in the first tier.
What about Corbett?
The fact that he was a boxer and the first one to really use the footwork. A man who could feint, I guess, and able to move around and punch going away or coming in or going to the side. I just can't see him, though, in the same class as a Dempsey. Yes, I think eventually Jack Dempsey would knock him out. I would have to say Jack Dempsey.
And so, incredible as it may seem, 3 out of the 4 experts, Fleischer, Walcott, Sharkey, feel that Jim Corbett could outpoint Dempsey, while just one person, Rocky Marciano, picks Dempsey by a knockout. Now, ladies and gentlemen, both of our men are in our dream ring. Jim Corbett to our left, Jack Dempsey to our right. Let's set the scene for you, give you some of the basic statistics. Jack Dempsey, 6'1", has had 81 fights over his career, 59 victories, 7 losses. And by the way, as I give you these figures, if the amount of wins and losses don't equate with the total fights, remember that many of the bouts they were in were called no-decision bouts, so do not figure in the statistics. Jack Dempsey in his corner now, moving up and down in his corner, and apparently disdainfully with his back to the rest of everything going on in the ring, which is a hustle and bustle at this time. Working with Dempsey in his corner will be manager Bill Brady and Doc Kearns, the great trainer. In fact, Kearns is at the back of Jack Dempsey now, rubbing vigorously at the shoulder blades. Dempsey, remember, features the left hook, the right to the body. His defense is fair. The gloves are now being slipped on Jack. He is looking this way, that way, but not in the direction of Big Jim Corbett. Corbett has a record of 33 fights, 20 victories, 4 losses. He has scored 9 KOs. He himself has been knocked out 3 times. By the way, just as a point of difference, but apropos of nothing in particular, he did not come in wearing the traditional robe. Corbett, who'll be using his toes as much as anything in this particular fight, will be at the rosin constantly, and is at the rosin right now. Hands on the ropes and doing a little time step. In his corner, Bill Delaney, Jim Daly, and a fellow who's known as a special bottle handler, John Donaldson. And he'll be the guy moving in and giving Corbett the swigs of water if he needs them, and he should need a few tonight for sure. As referee Ruby Goldstein will be handling all of the third man arbitering in the ring during this tournament, making some marks on the scorecard that will apparently serve as the official scorecard for this fight. And here comes the ring announcer Paul Berman, making his way through the ropes. And ladies and gentlemen, here is ring announcer Paul Berman. fighters move into the center of the ring. We'll be back in 1 minute with round one.
Dempsey and Corbett both sitting easy, looking fit and ready. There's the buzzer, the second scrabbling out of the ring, and here for the blow-by-blow is Guy LeBeau.
Thank you very much, Murray Warner. And ladies and gentlemen, this is it. The perfect fight from the view of the classic boxing expert. Superior boxer versus devastating hitter. Jack Dempsey flashes out of his corner more than crosses half of the ring before Corbett is even out. The Manasseh Mauler bulls Corbett toward his own corner, throws his right shoulder into Gentleman Jim and rips a hard left to the body. A hook that did not even travel a foot, believe me. Corbett takes it flush. Now up go the strong hands. He's trying to push Dempsey off him. Dempsey again leaps a half step forward and with head burrowed in, pounds a short, hard left to the ribs. Corbett winces. He's on the ropes. Dempsey has successfully lashed the same target twice. Now, here is Jim dancing a few steps to Dempsey's right. 2 strides away from him now, near the center of the ring. He is trying to get the timing. Dempsey still pushes forward. Jim weaves both hands directly in front of Dempsey's face, dances backward, puts a light left to the head. It grazes Dempsey. Dempsey misses a short right to the heart. Corbett now a long, full stride away from Dempsey, pushes a left to the head of Jack and dancing away, whips one more left to Dempsey's face. It lands. It doesn't seem to hurt, but it was beautifully executed. Jack still has ample balance to rush in. He does. He has tied Corbett up nicely directly overhead. And here comes referee Ruby Goldstein for the first time to the job to separate the great champions. With given action, if not hard hitting, since the opening bell. Though Corbett is the taller man by several inches, Dempsey has a 4-inch reach advantage. If Corbett thought to hold this fight at long range, the strategy can only cost him. Corbett now leaps in himself, throws 2 lefts to the head. They graze Jack as he comes pouring in. Corbett dances back, but Dempsey, ever the aggressor, swarming all over Corbett now. Here's a jolting left hook to the head of Corbett, and right back comes Dempsey with another hard left to the head. It lands, and it shakes up the tall fighting gentleman from San Francisco. He has never met the likes of the Manasseh Mauler. Here's Corbett, though, quickly off the ropes, back again. A right to the body by Corbett as Dempsey let up for just a moment. Now at the center of the ring, Corbett seems to be setting himself a bit better. He's sparring with Jack at ring center. Left hand held crooked at about chin level of Dempsey. He waves his left right in front of Dempsey's nose virtually. The left churns in front of Dempsey's face, his right churning in a similar motion but held at the waist. Dempsey throws a left lead. It misses Corbett, who rocks back on his right foot. Dempsey moves to the left. Corbett pivots right with him. Hands still churning. Dempsey throws another left to the head, grazing Jim, and misses. A right to the body. And Corbett danced backward beautifully. But as Corbett backs up, here's Dempsey right on top of him. There's a hard left to the head by Dempsey. Corbett weaves to the left and runs into a swinging right to the head. Dempsey feints a left, lands another right to the head. And here's a hard, perfect hit to the face by Dempsey. Dempsey still coming. Here he is, shooting left to the head. It's a bomb. Corbett is down. Corbett is down, huddled in the neutral corner. Here's the count. 3, 4, 5. He seems okay. 6, 7. There's the bell that saves it for Jim at the end of round 1.
Corbett's seconds worked frantically to bring him around. Round 2 coming up, and here's Guy.
Round 2 coming up. Here's the same opening pattern. Dempsey streaks across the ring, but Jim Corbett, tall and strong, ties him up right away. Dempsey really struggling to free himself. He needs help, and here is Ruby Goldstein giving same. They're approximately at ring center. Jim Corbett is an immensely handsome man, easy to understand as becoming an actor, and they say he's good. Jim is trying for a bit more as the aggressor. Here is a left jab to Dempsey's face. He misses the left as Dempsey crouches and weaves. Dempsey pounds a hard right to the body. Another ripping right by Dempsey lands, and Corbett gives ground, doing a little dance step as he moves away slightly to his left. Dempsey misses a left to the face, but with perfect direction, explodes a hard right just under the heart of Corbett. Dempsey winging now, another left to the body. He hooks 2 more short lefts to the body, a right to the body by Dempsey, and he is throwing from everywhere. Corbett, who's famed for catching blows on his hands, is simply at bay. Dempsey apparently has gotten in under Corbett's attempt to parry at every thrust. Now Corbett shoots a right to the body, bobs away from Dempsey's left to the head, takes a left to the head, lands another right to the body, takes a step backward. Jack follows him, hands cocked at the waist for the moment. He tries a swinging left to the midsection, misses. Corbett pulls his entire body out of range. Now he leaps forward, landing a body shot, but partly blocked by Dempsey. Corbett shoots a left to the head, a right to the body, and for the moment at least seems to be coming on stronger. Dempsey ducks under a long left, brings up his own hard right to the heart of Corbett. Dempsey apparently sought to make this round a get-to-the-meat round. Corbett in round one only stood Dempsey off as he speedily danced away from blows several times. Jack wants to spike his important advantage of speed right now. Dempsey shoots a hard right for the body. It rattles Big Jim. He's falling into a clinch and trying to hold Dempsey. And believe me, that's championship work. Corbett has the strong arms and it helps. But Dempsey wrestles the forearms, rips the kidneys. He, however, can't get really free. And they're over there in a neutral corner. Now Corbett pushes Dempsey off. Here he is moving around him. He hooks a left to the head. Now a soft left to the head. He dances away. Parries a right to the body. Stops Jack's left to the head in midair. This is great boxing. Dempsey can't get past the guard. Now he does. Here's a right to the body by Jack. A beauty. Corbett in splendid shape. He has shrugged that off. Dempsey powers forward again. Corbett ties him up, and Ruby Goldstein has to come in to work the two men free. Dempsey keeps pushing Corbett for the ropes. Dempsey has scored well with a body attack, but he can't sustain it. Corbett has too many hands and too much gas. But what we haven't seen yet is Corbett the Fancy Dan and Corbett the Boxer Supreme. Still, Dempsey has not yet tried for the KO setup he said he would. Dempsey now misses a left lead. Jack is fighting from his well-known left at chin-level stance, shoulders hunched in. Jim, meantime, stands straight up. He stops Dempsey's left in midair. He butts his right hand. He's got it up now and wrestles Jack's right hand high up above his head. Corbett lowers his body to left. Beautiful boxing as the bell ends round two.
Dempsey, clearly dominating so far, appears to be pressing for an early KO. Here's Guy.
Round three. Dempsey's bowling style has definitely bothered Jim Corbett. He's got a beautiful left jab. It's a most educated instrument, even a lethal weapon, but it has proven ineffective so far. Here's the switch. Dempsey coming out more slowly is suddenly met by a left to the face, a right cross to the chin by Corbett. The right's a blaster, and Dempsey has to take a beat before coming in. Here he is, though, bullying, head low, hooking a right to the body, another right to the body by Dempsey. Corbett on the ropes, ties up the left hand of Dempsey, but Dempsey pulls it free. But as he swings another right to the body of Corbett, Jim has danced around Jack and is actually behind him. That's the Corbett they advertised, the first great boxer in the business. Corbett landed a beauty at the beginning of this round. Now as Dempsey turns, Corbett moves in again, fires a light right to the body. Dempsey misses a left over the head. Corbett moves forward, another light right hand to the body by Corbett, and then moves to the clinch with a Manasseh Mauler in a neutral corner. Corbett is staring outside at the audience, and I remember his devoted wife once came to a fight dressed as a man because women were not permitted. Ruby Goldstein saying something to Dempsey. They split, they separate, and again, Corbett still on the offense, shooting a left to the head. It's his own type of blow, incidentally. Not a hook, not a jab. It's got power, and it starts often from a semi-extended position. Corbett, another left to the head, one more left to the head by the great boxer, and he stops Dempsey's right counter with his own good right hand. But Dempsey lowers the guns against him. Jack will not fight topside this round. Here's a right to the body by Dempsey, a right to the head by Jack, but a left to the head by Jack is a beauty. Corbett blocks a left lead, rips two lefts to the head, but takes a right to the body by Dempsey. Dempsey leaps forward to Corbett, and then virtually from under Corbett's chin, lifts a torrid left to the jaw. It is the shot of the fight. Corbett is stunned. Stunned again. Although he's been down once, he's been harder hit here. Hanging on, Dempsey. Dempsey tries another left to the jaw from short range. It's blocked. He tries a right to the body. It's stopped in midair, and Corbett gamely cocks his head back, making Dempsey miss a right uppercut to the chin. Corbett's fine condition and boxing skill definitely saved him that time. He shook to the toes from Dempsey's pulverizing blast to the chin. Remember, Corbett has only been knocked down 3 times in his career. Corbett again out at ring center, churning those mitts in front of Dempsey. Now Jack scowling, moving forward. He takes a left on the head, another left on the face. by Corbett, but Dempsey comes back with a devastating left to the body. Once more, he torpedoes the body, and although Corbett's on the move, Dempsey's now hitting with great power. Corbett sets to throw a left to Dempsey's nose. He lands another left to the head of Dempsey, but to deliver those shots which do not have the explosion, he's got to leave that vulnerable left side open to Dempsey, who immediately rips home 2 hooks to the side, a light running to the body of Corbett. Corbett, left-handed all the way now, shoots 2 lefts to the mouth of Dempsey, but he has to again take a light right and ripping left to the body by Dempsey at the end of round 3.
Corbett looked as if he's recovered from that first round knockdown. Round 4 coming up, and here's Guy LeBeau.
Okay, as we come out for round 4, neither man is cut. Both hardy. They do not cut easily. Dempsey immediately brings up the big guns. Here's a hard left hook to the head. Corbett did not get his right hand up quickly enough. It was at the waist. Dempsey virtually leaped off the ground to fire it. Dempsey on top of Corbett. He's landing in hard. Here's a winging right to the chin at somewhat longer range. Corbett defending on all sides as Dempsey powers in. Fires a jolting short right to the head. Closes up close. Rips Corbett's face with a left hook. Corbett trying to grab hands. Dempsey must seem like a human octopus. His head attack continues. Corbett trying to push Dempsey off desperately. Jack again rips right and left to the head, right and left to the face of Corbett. Corbett is wearing. He is taking awful punishment. Dempsey apparently has tested the Corbett counterattack and has not found it as potent as Gene Tunney's. A breather now as Dempsey steps back, moves to the right. Corbett circles with him overhead, lands a left on Dempsey's head, a left to the face by Corbett, but they're just flicks. Dempsey shoots a left lead. Corbett fires a beauty of a countering right cross, right on the button. Dempsey backs off. It's Corbett's best shot of the fight, although he had a good round last round. He doesn't follow the attack, though, and once more, Dempsey surrounds him with a rain of short blows. Dempsey a long right to the body, partially blocked by Corbett. Dempsey doesn't want Gentleman Jim to bring up the long jabs. He doesn't like them. They clinch, and the crowd applauds a pretty exhibition of hitting by the Manasseh Mauler. As they resume, Corbett backs off toward the center, beautifully parries Dempsey's straight right by driving it downward and away with his own right, and rips 2 lefts to the mouth. A left hook to the head by Corbett, another left to the mouth by Corbett, all light blows except for that one. A smashing left, flush on the mouth, and a lighter left to the head by Gentleman Jim. He was throwing fast, and the crowd loves it. Corbett is having his trouble with Dempsey, who is the hardest hitter he has ever met, who slips the left lead neatly and is not the stationary target John L. was. Here's Dempsey now, backing off. He's trying to set Corbett up for a KO. That's what I'm thinking now. Dempsey trying to draw the left lead to cock his own right. Now he delivers his own left jab, likely to the head of Corbett. Taps a right to the heart, a left to the head by Dempsey. Fires a hard right to the body of Corbett. Jim does a time step off to the left. Partially blocks the right, snaps 2 left jabs to the head. Corbett again, this time shortening his stride to plop another left jab in Dempsey's mouth. But he is suddenly rocked. Dempsey unloads a murderous left and right to the head. Another left to the head as Corbett works the body over with soft left and rights to the body. Corbett puts a left to the mouth, a right to the head by Dempsey. 2 lefts and 2 rights to the head by Dempsey. A beautiful rally by Dempsey. Corbett comes back with a left to the mouth, a right to the head, a right to the body by Corbett. But it's Dempsey most of the way, if not all of the way, as we're closing in on the end of round 4. Here's Corbett again, putting a left to the mouth. Seconds only remain in this, the 4th round, and there is the bell ending round 4. What a round!
Corbett was hurt again as round 4 ended, and clearly Dempsey has things pretty much his own way. Once again, Guy LeBeau.
Okay, Murray. As we come out for round 5, you can assess that Corbett's height advantage has been no ring advantage whatever. Leaping Jack Dempsey has equalized that height. And here he comes after Jim immediately with 2 lefts to the body, 1 hard. He takes a left to the head from Jim Corbett. Bob Fitzsimmons knocked Corbett out with a body punch, and Dempsey well knows it. But now he fires a left to the head. It misses. Corbett is 2 strides away, legs far apart, turning those hands up and down. Left hand nearly fully extended now, right partially extended. Dempsey's in the semi-peekaboo style in the center of the ring, stalking, weaving. Here's a straight right to the ribs by Dempsey. A short left to the body by Jack. Corbett rips 2 lefts hard on the mouth of Dempsey, and in a flash, a beautiful left along the face of Dempsey. I think he's cut him. I think it's first blood for Corbett. Yep, Jack is bleeding from what looks like a cut above the left eye. Maybe some of the lid is cut too and bleeding. Dempsey doesn't stop, though. He tries left and right to the body. The right scores. Corbett now moves to his left, which he doesn't do often. He winces as Jack lands the right to the midsection. Corbett grabs Dempsey's right hand, and he swings back to Dempsey's right. Jack hooks a left to the head. Corbett ties him up near the far ropes. Referee Ruby Goldstein hasn't much work here. Corbett has shown beautiful boxing skill tonight and in this particular round. Although I wondered why he doesn't move away from Dempsey's torrid right and often moves into it. Corbett, though, cannot be faulted in the fight he's making against the mauler. Corbett not allowing Jack to get inside and close if he can help it. But how long can he stand him off? That's the question. Here's a solid right again to the jaw of Corbett. It's a bruiser. You can feel it yourself. Corbett's legs are wobbly. He uses that left jab twice to the head of Dempsey to keep the mauler from ripping in. While Corbett has been concentrating on nullifying the body attack, Dempsey wisely encouraged an attack to the head, and again lands with both mitts to the head. Here's Corbett coming back with a hard winging attack to the head of Dempsey. Another left to the head of Dempsey. A right cross to the mouth of Jack, who comes forward and is gladly taking punishment just to keep his beautiful old target in sight. It's Jim Corbett, the target. They clinch. They take their breaths. Dempsey has not had Corbett rope cornered too much in this fight. Now coming out of the clinch, Dempsey crouches and burrows forward. Corbett dancing, weaving backward, hands churning, looking to counter as he knows he needs points. Dempsey rips a hard left to the body, a right to the body by Dempsey. Both are hard. Corbett blocks a left to the midsection, but Jack's on top of him, and there are just too many fists flying now. Corbett trying to block the attack, but Dempsey does have a thunderstorm going. Rights and lefts to the head by Dempsey. Here is a hard left at the head by Dempsey. He rips the back of Corbett's head with a left hand. A left to the face of Corbett. 2 rights to the body of Corbett. Another right to the body by Dempsey. And this time the attack is sustained, and I mean sustained. There's the bell ending round 5.
Dempsey seconds have stopped that eye cut. His body shots have really slowed Corbett down. And here's Guy again.
As they come out for round 6, Dempsey's eye appears to be better, but that should be Corbett's target for tonight. Dempsey's in a jabbing stance. He misses 2 lefts to the eye of Corbett. Moves in close. Hooks a left to the head, another left to the head, but all this is softened by Corbett's beautiful use of his head. He snaps it back, he bobs it side to side, and makes Dempsey miss. Corbett works on Dempsey's eyes again. Corbett jabs a left to the cut eye, another left to the face of Dempsey. Dempsey partially flicks them off. Dempsey takes 2 lefts, snap to the face. He appears to be unmindful of his eye that bled in the last round, and apparently it was a superficial cut, though it still continues to bleed. Corbett dances back, his legs wide apart. You know, it seems strange to see this very large man dancing. It's just incongruous looking, but he is the first to do it in the ring. Dempsey's annoyed for the moment. Now he stalks his man again, and his aim is for the body. 2 rights to the body of Corbett. Corbett blocks a short left to the neck, delivers 2 jabs to the head, but takes 2 short rights under the heart. They clinch. Jack breaks out fast, and there it is again. A jolting straight right to the jaw of Corbett, and he is wobbling. He shakes his head. Dempsey is following in, quickly trying to kill. He drives rights and lefts to the body, but Corbett partially catches them as the crowd really roars it up for defense. Dempsey, you know, is also an innovator in the ring. He's the first to have used the relentless, ever-moving forward attack. He can knock you out with either hand, and once on target, he seldom misses. Corbett gets his breath back, both fighters circling in the center of the ring. Dempsey's eye still bleeding. At longer range, Dempsey now jabs at Corbett. Corbett tries his own left jab over the arm of Jack. He is short. Dempsey again tries the jab, lands it on the head of Corbett. Corbett speeding up now. Here's a hard left, nearly a roundhouse blow, which catches Dempsey on the jaw. A right to the body by Corbett, but Jack comes back flailing with short shots, and they hurt. But Corbett is catching most of them in midair, beautifully. Corbett lands his own left to the head, and suddenly Corbett fires a jolting right to the head of Dempsey. Another left to Dempsey's head, and once more lands on Dempsey's face. Corbett at the fastest he's been yet. That bleeding eye may be bothering Dempsey, but he waves right in. Here he is, tying Corbett to the ropes. A pretty rally, though, by Gentleman Jim. Dempsey moves back out of the clinch fast, but right back in. Corbett unties himself and nimbly dances off to the left. He is at his finest at ring center. He has ballet grace for a big man. Dempsey follows in swinging. Only seconds remain in the round. Here are 2 hard lefts to the body by Dempsey. Corbett blocks a right to the body, but Jack hammers in another right, and it lands. Corbett trying to hold on. He is wobbly. Dempsey wriggles free, rocks back a moment. Corbett leads with the left. Dempsey weaves to the right, and there it is. A solid right to the head of Corbett that shakes the big man to the toes. Dempsey immediately swarming in. He's throwing blindly, but there's the bell, ending round 6.
Corbett opened that cut over Dempsey's eye again, but his seconds have it stopped. Dempsey glaring toward Corbett's corner, and here's Guy for round 7.
Okay, Murray Warner. It's a tired Jim Corbett reporting in for the 7th round. Dempsey has proven like no one he's ever faced. But look at this. Corbett goes to the attack. Here's a solid left to the chin by Corbett, a left to the face by Gentleman Jim. He dances back from Dempsey, puts 2 left jabs to the nose of Jack Dempsey. Dempsey flails at the head of Corbett, and Jim blocks the blows in midair. He whacks Dempsey's shoulder with a left hand, rips a left to the mouth of Dempsey, a right to the body of Dempsey, and Jack is caught cold for the moment, like the rest of us. Corbett parries a left lead, catches a left hook in midair. What a rally by him. Now he does a little dance step off to the left, rocks back on his haunches as Dempsey is short with a right to the mouth and misses a left hook to the head. 2 left jabs to the face land on Dempsey. And Corbett, although weary, is still a master boxer and puncher in there. And if he catches his second breath, we're thinking this fight could soon be equalized. Now Dempsey puts his own left jab lightly to the neck of Corbett and comes back with a snapping left on the head. Dempsey pouring in again. Corbett rocks back, but he can't get out of the way this time. Here's Dempsey with a hard left and right to the head. Up goes Corbett's hands. Down comes Dempsey's attack. Dempsey shoots 2 hands to the body, but takes a left and right combination and a right to the upper part of his body from Jim Corbett. They clinch, and no one here is complaining about action at all. Bob Fitzsimmons, you remember, knocked Corbett out with a body attack, and Dempsey remembers that, I'm sure, but here he is landing a murderous right to the face of Corbett. The great champion blinks. That hurt everybody in the place. Dempsey cautious for the moment, or maybe tired. Corbett ambles backward. Dempsey follows, and here is a right to the body. A wicked shot by Dempsey. Another right to the body by Dempsey, and Corbett is down on his side. Let's pick up the count as Goldstein tolls. 3, 4, 5, 6. Corbett will make it. He's up on 1 foot, taking the mandatory count. Goldstein wipes off his gloves. It's the second time in this fight that Corbett has been down. Now back out in the center of the ring. Jack roars right back, coming back to the attack. Corbett still not out of the haze. Dempsey's on top of him. Corbett still blocks well at the body, but Jack's left is raining dynamite at Corbett's face and head. Here's a solid left hook to the head of Corbett. Dempsey in for the kill. Another left and right to the head of Corbett. Jim Bailey throws a left to the chin. Tries to hold Dempsey, but Dempsey rushes past the guards, which cannot contain him now. Here's another left and right to the head of Corbett, and once again Corbett down. Corbett down in a huddle right near this microphone, and it looks like it may be over. Let's pick up the count. 7, no response. 9, 10, that's it. Jack Dempsey draws first blood in the All-Star Tournament with a clean KO of Jim Corbett in the 7th round. Here's Murray Warner.
There's no question now, guys. Dempsey's savage hooks got the job done. Jack is now helping Corbett's seconds get Gentleman Jim back to his corner. As the crowd cheers, Dempsey now turns, hands over his head. Ruby Goldstein looking at Corbett in the corner. Now Paul Berman is climbing into the ring, gets his microphone, and raises his hand.
Now, here's Paul Berman with the official announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner by a knockout in 2 minutes and 40 seconds of the 7th round, the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey. On November 6th, with the winner of next week.
Well, that's it. The official results. Jack Dempsey beats Jim Corbett in 7 rounds. And we'll be right back with our analysis of this fight.
Well, Guy, it looks like the all-time heavyweight tournament's off with a bang. Frankly, I imagine about now a lot of old-timers must be reviewing their estimates of Jim Corbett.
I don't know about that, Maury. You know, we all tend at times to look backward through a haze of sentiment, but anyone lasting 7 rounds with a guy who hits as hard as Dempsey's got a lot going for him. And frankly, after that first-round knockdown, I thought the fight would end even earlier than it did.
Well, Corbett's ability to take punishment was stretched to the limit, that's for sure. In looking at the scoring up to the moment of the knockout, Dempsey had won every round and had a decisive edge. Many of the experts felt that Corbett might, in the style of Tunney, manage to outpoint Dempsey, but he just didn't show the footwork or the hand speed necessary to keep Dempsey away from him.
You know, I think that probably indicates in a way just how much boxing has changed since those days. But on the other hand, you simply must evaluate tonight's fight on the basis of the caliber of Corbett's opponent. Many people feel that Dempsey reflects the ultimate slugger, mauler type of fighter. He just never lets up. Those punishing short hooks to the head and body, well, they'd give any fighter a bad time in any era. And certainly after taking a few of those, as Corbett did in the very first round, any speed merchant would surely be slowed up. And my personal observation would be that the first round punishment simply took the starch and speed out of Big Jim. And from then on, it was simply a matter of time till Dempsey put him away.
Well, that might be so, Guy, but let's take a look at each round of the fight. In the first, of course, Dempsey scored repeatedly with hooks to score that knockdown, while Corbett really managed to land only one right cross with any steam in it. And then in the second, Dempsey shifted the attack to the body, scoring repeatedly with solid left and right hands, and of course that one jolting uppercut. And again, Corbett in the second round, fighting defensively, managed to land only one telling blow.
The third round had Dempsey still on the attack, scoring repeatedly with hooks to the head and body, while Corbett, concentrating on jabs, tried to fend him off. However, in this round, Corbett seemed to be recovering just a little bit. But then in the fourth round, Dempsey's hooks to the head had Corbett hurt again. In the fifth, Corbett seemed to rally a little, scoring with some solid jabs, a couple of good hooks to the head. But they didn't slow the Dempsey attack at all. The Manasseh Mauler kept the pressure on, belted away to head and body with both hands.
And then the sixth round was Dempsey's all the way as he landed solid hooks and right hands and had Corbett in trouble almost from the opening bell. And of course in the seventh, the Dempsey punching power paid off and Corbett took the count. The KO combination was a left hook, right cross, and another left hook. No matter how you bend it, it was a conclusive victory for Dempsey and another star in his crown.
Right you are, Murray. The tough puncher from Colorado proved again tonight why he's rated by so many people as one of the greatest to ever step into a ring. And of course, we'll be looking forward to seeing how he does in future fights in the all-time heavyweight tournament.
In a minute, we'll continue and take a look at next week's match. Guy, in view of the finish here tonight, it might be interesting to review some of those expert predictions about this fight.
You know, Murray, you're right. That might be a very good idea. And as I recall, they were almost unanimous in picking Dempsey to win. One of the greatest champions of them all, Joe Louis, said,
Corbett was a great boxer, very fast. I think he might have been a little better boxer than Tooney.
Mm-hmm.
So that type of a fighter, I would imagine, would give Dempsey a little trouble for a while. But I think that Dempsey probably would have been too strong, though. You know, he'd have rocked that Alpha type. You know, he just danged in the first round. He was in the 15th round. See, so Dempsey, I think, he'd catch up with you.
That was how Joe Louis thought this fight tonight would go. And remember, the Las Vegas line made Dempsey a 5-2 favorite.
You know, Guy, I think one of the most interesting parts of this whole series has been the chance to meet and talk with the greats of boxing. Great athletes like Louis and the rest, and to hear how even these experts disagree. For example, Chris Dundee said,
Well, I think Jack Dempsey would have knocked out of Jim Corbett. I say yes in about 3 rounds.
I see what you mean, Murray. His brother Angelo, Cassius Clay's trainer, said this.
I think that Dempsey will be too strong for Jim Corbett. I think he'll walk right through him, yeah. I don't think that Corbett would have the footwork of the present time when Jack was fighting compared to the Corbett time. I think Jack Dempsey will knock out Corbett.
So both Dundees were in agreement that Dempsey would take Corbett, but the man Dempsey beat for the title, Big Jess Willard, didn't think so. He said,
Oh, anybody could lick Jack Dempsey. He'd beat anything. Nothing on earth.
Well, it's obvious that Big Jess didn't think much of Dempsey's chances. But on the other hand, Max Schmeling, the man who KO'd the great Joe Louis in their first match, and in turn lost to Louis in the rematch, didn't agree with him.
Well, I think Jack Dempsey would win easily, but that doesn't mean that Corbett wasn't a great man. I met him when he was very nice. He was a nice old man then already, but he spoke very calm and he gave me nice advice, you know. But I think with Corbett, the old time stopped, the old boxing time, and with the Jack Dempsey, the new time came. That was Dempsey era, I would say. Dempsey, yeah, sure. I believe, yes.
And so the majority of the experts picked Dempsey to KO Corbett, and of course, Dempsey wound up winning by a knockout in the 7th round. Now, on November 6th, he'll be matched against the winner of next week's fight in the all-time heavyweight tournament. And that second fight should be a dandy. It pairs the Boston Strong Boy, John L. Sullivan, and the Cinderella Man, Jimmy Braddock.
And speaking of next week's fight, let's take a look at our 2 contestants right now. First, the great John L. Sullivan. John L., probably the brawlingest, roughest fighter to ever hold the heavyweight title. There are more stories, more anecdotes about him than any other heavyweight who ever lived. He claimed he could lick any man in the house. More than once, he proved he could. John L. was the last of the bare-knuckle champions. He hit his peak at 24. He was 5 feet 10 and a half inches tall, weighed 200 pounds, a terrific right-hand hitter, but an extremely poor defensive fighter who could be hit with almost anything. Even though he could be hit, though, his tremendous strength and stamina is shown by the fact that he was only knocked down twice in his entire career, while at the same time dropping opponents to the canvas 149 times. Sullivan won the title from Paddy Ryan in 1882 by his KO of Ryan in 9 rounds. He was a participant in the last of the great bare-knuckle fights, the one everyone familiar with boxing still talks about, when Sullivan dropped Jack Kilrain in 75 murderous rounds. And of course, when Sullivan went against Corbett, he was 8 years past his prime, we must remember. At any rate, Corbett knocked out the heavily favored Sullivan in 21 rounds. Sullivan was a truly legendary fighter, whose history makes him considerably larger than life. So many stories and legends built up about him. Here's one Rocky Marciano told us.
There was an article in the Brockton newspaper, I think it was something like 50 years ago today, and what had happened was John L. Sullivan had come into the city square, then called Legion Parkway, and on a bet, could he knock out a horse with one punch? And he did. He won the bet.
Jess Willard described the bare-knuckle days this way.
He fought at a different time and entirely a different deal. Every time he went out on a knee, they called it a round. That's it. Run into 30 or 40 rounds. Those old fighters that when they scuffled and tugged and pulled, and they didn't even. I don't think they didn't have no gloves on at all. Bare knuckles.
You think
they couldn't hit that day, because if they did, they'd break their hands all up.
Cassius Clay had this interesting observation about the old times in the ring.
Go watch the old films. If you don't believe it, they fought like washwomen. I saw them. They fight just like women. I was at Jim Jacob's studio. He's got all the films, the real heavyweights. And if you see them, they had no class, no footwork, no speed, no color, no timing, no rhythm. They swung from the floor. When the man would fall, he would hit him before he'd get up. When the man would fall out of the ring, he wouldn't let him get in the ring. If I did it today, they say I'm the dirtiest fighter in the world.
Very obviously, Murray, Clay doesn't think much of the old-timers.
No, Guy, he doesn't. But, of course, he doesn't think much of anyone in the ring other than himself. Now, we'll be back in a minute with the story about next week's opponent for John L. Sullivan, the Cinderella Man, Jimmy Braddock.
Now then, let's take a hard look at James J. Braddock. The Cinderella Man pretty well epitomizes what determination and fighting heart can do. Braddock did not hit his peak till he was 30 years old. He was an orthodox, stand-up, classic-type boxer with a good right to the head, a good left jab. He was a better-than-average defensive fighter, hard to hit with a solid punch, and an excellent counterpuncher. Braddock was a 10-1 underdog June 13th, 1935. Believe this or not, the promoter actually had an ambulance waiting to take Braddock to the hospital from Madison Square Garden if Bayer, one of the hardest hitters of all time, should injure Jimmy. But Braddock delivered the goods. He brilliantly outboxed Bayer. He won the title on a 15-round decision.
And 2 years later, Braddock was knocked out by Joe Louis to lose his title, but not before dropping the Brown Bomber in the first round. We talked to Jimmy Braddock about his style, boxing in general, and John L. Sullivan in particular.
Let's take the situation of John L. Sullivan. Certainly, he must be one of your idols, of course. You've read about him, heard about him.
I certainly have, and John L. was one of the greats of boxing. He goes way back to the 1880s when the Marquis of Queensberry rules first come in. He's our first world's heavyweight boxing champ under them rules. He was a real tough, they say, a barroom fighter. He was a real brawler in the ring and out of the ring. But with a fella like John, I had to box him a little and do a little punching with him. But I don't know how it would have come out, but I would have been in there trying.
Have you ever heard about how hard he could really hit? One hears, fabulous stories about this. Could he put his hand through a wall, for example, and hit you on the other side and knock you out? But how hard would you say John L. could
Well,
hit?
I don't know how hard he could hit, but we had some pretty good punches around him. In our day, a fellow like Max Baer could hit you and knock you out in the third row. That's the same as punching through the wall and hitting you on the other side. But I guess John L. Had a lot of brawls in his day, and that's where that must have come from, outside the ring.
Jimmy was every inch the gentleman when we met with him, and many top authorities of the fight game think a great deal of him. For example, Angelo Dundee.
Well, a good, smart head. I mean, the Cinderella Man, good boxer, offset a rough, strong guy. But I don't know if the durability of this fella will be able to offset a Braddock. I don't know. See, now, it's a terrific blending of styles, like strength against cuteness, ability to move. Now, Braddock is a little advanced in the era that our boy was Sullivan was. So here we go again. Now, I think that the know-how of the Braddock will offset the strength of a Sullivan. I think because the Sullivan used to chalk the line and bang away, whereas Braddock would be the last guy to chalk the line and bang away. I feel that Braddock will lick Sullivan.
I think it's interesting that in this case, both Angelo and his brother Chris agree. Chris is pretty positive in his prediction of the outcome of the Sullivan-Braddock match.
Well, again, I say all you know about Sullivan is what you can see on films today. And what could Sullivan been but a brawler? He could have been like Tony Galento. And I'd say I couldn't say too much about Sullivan. I don't think he'd have gone very far in the boxing world of today.
All right, how about a Jimmy Braddock?
Jimmy Braddock, I've seen many a time. Jimmy Braddock was a very good boxer. In fact, Braddock didn't get good until later on in life. He matured late in life, being Irish, and he became a heavyweight when his best days were over. Braddock was a very dangerous right-hand puncher and a good boxer. Braddock, to me, at his peak, would have been good enough to fight most anybody.
How do you think he would have done against a John L. Sullivan?
I think there'd been no contest. I think that Braddock would have knocked out a John L. Sullivan. I think he'd have cut him up badly where the referee would have had to stop the fight.
Well, both Dundees thought that Braddock would be a shoo-in. But Nat Fleischer, the grand old man of boxing, doesn't agree with them.
I traveled with John L. on several occasions up to Hartford and out to Brooklyn to the museum where he had exhibition contests in conjunction with his shows. And in those, he definitely illustrated to the public tremendous hitting power. And that is all that he did possess, just hitting power.
What about a guy like Jimmy Braddock?
Well, I don't think that Jim Braddock would come in with the old-timers at all. Jim Braddock was one of the modern era, a fighter who possessed a considerable amount of ring cleverness.
And how would you see a fight between John L. and Jim Braddock?
I don't think that a fight of that type, both in their prime, would have lasted more than possibly 3 or 4 rounds, with Sullivan the victor by a knockout.
So Fleischer and the Dundees don't agree. The Las Vegas line set by Jimmy the Greek Snyder makes Sullivan a 2-1 favorite. So they agree with Nat Fleischer. In any event, we'll find out next Monday night.
And we'll be back in just 1 minute for some final words. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that about wraps it up for tonight's first fight in the all-time heavyweight tournament. The result again, Jack Dempsey, taking the measure of Jim Corbett in 7 rounds. Remember, next week, same time, same station, Jimmy Braddock versus John L. Sullivan.
And the winner of that fight meets Dempsey on Monday, November 6th in the quarterfinal round of the tournament. Remember, too, the all-time heavyweight tournament contest is still open, so get your entry in. You may win our beautiful 26-foot Seabird sedan cruiser or one of 9 other prizes. This is Murray Warner
and Guy LeBeau saying thanks for listening. Tune in next week.